It's Wednesday, the 23rd of August, 2023. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's get going. Story number 1, BHP has reported a slump in its underlying profit on the back of much lower commodity prices, but it still managed a full-year profit of $21 billion.
Lower iron ore, copper and coking coal prices, plus a rare drop in the volume of West Australian iron ore sold during the year meant the result was below expectations and BHP's share price fell nearly 1% on the news. The final dividend of 80 US cents a share means the full-year profit and dividend were below consensus. In essence, demand for commodities in developed economies has slowed, while China remains the wild card. BHP said demand for iron ore and coking coal, both used in steelmaking, will depend on how effective stimulus packages are in boosting the Chinese economy. Significantly, the big Australian still expects iron ore prices to remain above $80 US a tonne. That's historically high, good for the federal budget as well. Overall, iron ore prices were down about 18%, coking coal was off 22%, thermal coal was about 9% lower, and copper prices were off 12%.
Sean, BHP is Australia's largest company. It is massive. It's worth nearly $220 billion. How's it travelling?
Look, things don't look overly flash in the near term, mostly because of China. Boss Mike Henry was a little downbeat on that country yesterday. He basically said if Beijing can stimulate the property market, things will be okay. The fact that Henry reckons iron ore prices will remain above $80 US a tonne, in part because of a structural shift post-COVID, is probably good for BHP because it's a relatively low-cost producer of ore. The X factor is how big the returns are from BHP's big spending in the future-facing commodities. Think copper, nickel, potash. In fact, BHP will spend about $15 billion this financial year, the same next financial year. If it can get a good return on that, then BHP's long-term future should be assured.
All right, on to story number 2. Coles has some good news for customers at last. Fresh produce prices are falling finally, even though grocery items and dairy products, they still remain expensive.
Yes. The country's second largest retailer said revenues across the group rose more than 5% last financial year. That meant a $1 billion net profit. I like these results, these supermarket results, because they give a good insight into what's happening on the ground. Boss Leah Weckert said cost of living pressures remain the most significant issue for customers, but that's not bad for Coles because people are cutting back on beauty services, entertainment, eating out, but not necessarily groceries. Food price inflation for the 12 months was a hefty 6.7%. The good news was the last 3 months, it was only 5.8%. It's going in the right direction. The bad news in the result was a blowout in costs and the group share price closed down 6.7%. Interestingly, Coles expects to open about 15 stores this year and close 6. It's also struggling with stock loss, food waste, but mostly theft. In fact, it's up 20% year on year and it reflects cost of living pressures. The Australian Retailers Association now puts theft at about 2 to 3% of retail sales. That's a lot of stealing.
That is a lot of stealing. And staying in the retail sector for our third story, Sean, Scentre Group, which owns Westfield Malls, announced a strong half-year result, sending its share price up 4%.
So far this calendar year, 314 million customers have visited a Westfield Mall, up nearly 10% from a year ago. Chief Executive Elliot Rusanow said it reflected the group's ability to create experiences for customers. Remember, once upon a time, you used to go to the mall to shop. Now it's about service. Food services, health providers, banks, entertainment areas. Overall, Scentre announced a 10% rise in net operating profit, its best ever June half. Important for the group, which was hit hard by COVID, new leases are being signed at rates higher than previous leases.
Story number 4, one from politics, Sean. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the intergenerational report that's due for release tomorrow is an important signpost for where Australia is headed over the coming decades.
When asked whether the report's expectations that economic growth would slow due to an ageing population and lower population growth, whether they were cause for concern, Albanese said, no. But we need to plan for it as a nation. He was also out spruiking a yes vote in the Voice referendum later this year. He said a successful referendum on the Voice would lift the country up and allow the nation to become more mature. He was speaking on the steps of Sydney Opera House yesterday. Now, he was alongside former Liberal MP and ultramarathon runner Pat Farmer. Apparently, Farmer is jogging around the country for about 6 months to campaign for the Voice. I like that story, Michael.
Yeah, I like it too. All right, last one. Story number 5, Sean. Japan will start releasing more than 1 million metric tons of treated radioactive water from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear power plant tomorrow. They're putting into motion a plan that's drawn pretty strong criticism from China.
The plan, approved 2 years ago by the Japanese government as crucial to decommissioning the plant, has also faced criticism from local fishing groups who, not surprisingly, fear reputational damage and a threat to their livelihood. The announcement yesterday comes a day after the government said it had won a degree of understanding from the fishing industry over the release of the water. Japan has said that the water release is safe. The International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the United Nations nuclear watchdog, okayed the plan in July. It said it met international standards and that the impact it would have on people and the environment was negligible. I prefer zero.
Yeah, me too. All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 23rd of August, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. If 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed Business News. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can also find every Wednesday a new episode of How Do They Afford That, which is our weekly podcast that focuses on helping your money to work a bit harder for you. This week's episode is all about how to get ahead if you are a low-income earner. It is a really good listen. We'll put a link in today's show notes. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.